I want to share how I turned my t-shirt business dream into reality and how I produced the official Atypical Daydream t-shirt, all thanks to Printful. Imagine this: no storing inventory, no worries about unsold stock, shipping hassles, or handling returns. Printful lets you create high-quality products made and shipped worldwide directly from your desk. And it's completely free to use. You only pay for what you sell. You can print a variety of products: t-shirts, hoodies, bags, shoes, blankets, greeting cards, and much more. So, are you ready to make your dream project or business come true? Check out the show notes for the official link to the Atypical Daydream t-shirt and my affiliate link to get started with Printful. Using the affiliate link supports my podcast, helping me bring you more incredible stories. Thanks for the support.
You get out there and you realize there are other people out there, and you make all these, everything's an assumption. But when you get out there, there's no assumptions, it's reality. And you realize, wow, people have it, really tough.
Hello, my atypical daydreamers. Welcome to the show. My first guest is Patrick Caldwell, and yes, we are related. He's one of my older brothers, the one that hitchhiked all over the U.S. in the mid-'80s. Today, Patrick pulls back the curtain to expose the wild underbelly of the road.
When I graduated from high school, I had no desire but all the expectation to keep going to, go to school after that. But I had it's like, what the fuck am I going to do? I don't want to do anything. And at that time, I thought I could be a musician. So, my friend Judd, the only guy who we know that actually became a musician out of all this, he's one of those guys, people who know what they're going to do, right? Whether that's a job or be a musician or whatever. He wanted to go out and start making music. So we took our guitars and had Joe drive us to the edge of town, headed west, and we just hitchhiked. And that was the thing. We were just going to go out. There was no plan, really. It was just leave. I'm on my own. There's no rule, right? There's nothing we have to do, So now I'm talking from a place of privilege, right? So, I know that I'm white and male in the United States and upper middle class. So with all that caveat, I do think that if you're given the chance, that's the way to go. So we left and we just started going. And the one plan we did have was to hit the coastal highway in California. That got smushed because we realized you can't hitchhike on that highway when we got out there. But long before that, we went through West Texas. So overall, we went through West Texas, then we headed into Colorado, and then we rode up the east all the way up through Nevada, and we ended up in the most northwest was in Idaho, and then we headed across, just right across the top of the Dakotas, and we made sure we went through the Badlands. Then we ended up in Chicago and came down to Champaign, Illinois. Then we actually took a bus from there down to New Orleans, and then we hitchhiked back from New Orleans to Austin. What I realized when you go out there is being out there among people that you realize, oh my God, people have it, really tough. And I think that, everybody stays home and you're safe. But when you put yourself out there where you're not in a home, you realize, well, one, it gives me not a respect in a good way, but, a guy who's an alcoholic living on the street, you have to be really, really strong to make that, right? You can't do that unless you're the weak people die off. That's purely thin in the herd kind of stuff. And there are people out there who will help you. Typically, those are either religious or they've already done their hitchhiking on their own. Those are the kind of people who help you get to where your next place is. And then there's just a lot of really psychotic and scary people out there on the road. I think that's part of what I learned out of that is the reality that, it's very stark. Either you're in and safe or out and dangerous. And again, I got to speak from my own privileged side. Obviously, I didn't grow up put at risk or anything, so maybe other people realize this long before I do. But it was also an enormously fun thing to do. One of my favorite out of that was we got stuck out in West Texas. One guy was driving us. I can't remember why we got out of the car with him. I think he was going the other direction than where we wanted to go. But he let us out in the middle of fucking nowhere. I mean, there was nobody there. Hitchhiking is a numbers game, right? The 1,000 cars go by, you get one. So if it takes 40 hours to see 1,000 cars, you slow down. But we were stuck by the side of the road, and this beautiful Cadillac pulls up and said, "Do you need a ride?" So he said, yeah, obviously. And we jump in. So there's a man and a woman up front. The man is red, and he looks like Santa Claus, but with red hair. I mean, literally, that's Santa Claus. Same age, same everything. And the lady, she just looked same age, short hair, nothing discernible. She wasn't Miss Santa Claus or anything. So she was just a lady there. So they said, hey, there's beer and food back there if you want any. So, it's like perfect, right? And we opened up the food thing, though, and it was Mexican food that had been sitting there for several days. It was just rotting food in there. But yeah, there was a lot of beer. So we started drinking beer, and they were obviously very intoxicated already. But out there, I mean, it's like there's no one there. These wide highway, there's nobody around, and it was nighttime. So, most people are home. So we were driving. It was like dusk, so we could still see. And the lady proceeds to take her top off. And it was just like matter of fact, right? She took her top off. It wasn't like to interact with us or anything. She turned around and she started talking to us. She said, "I'm dying." And then she did this with her fingers on her mouth and showed us that it was bleeding. Blood was in her mouth. "I'm giving Red this car if he'll drive me to Amarillo." So Red's along for the ride just simply to get the free car. So she says, "I've been dying, and I put my son through college and then medical school. And then he basically just wrote me out of his life," right? So it was a very sad story, right? And that went on for at least 30 minutes. Red's driving like 40 miles an hour, too. He's driving really slow. And then I remember she looks up and she looks at Judd and she goes, "You remind me exactly of my son." So that was weird. And so there was a lot of talking directly at Judd. And I think there's some judgment of Judd. I mean, the overall thing lasted like 4 hours that we were driving with this guy because it got dark as we were going. But then the conversation went a little darker, and she said, never said murder, but I mean, you get the feel that this woman was heading towards something about murder, but it didn't really make any sense. She was just talking. Then she said, "You're going to be safe. We're going to take you to the Devil's Back Acre and drop you off, but you're going to be safe." I mean, these people they were short. Santa Claus is short, right? So Red is a short old guy, and she's probably in her late 60s and very short too. So physically, unless they had guns, I wouldn't, we could have fought them off or whatever, but it was getting really dark. And so I think then Red put the radio on, and then we're playing some country music. And so it quieted down for a little while. And then we see her slowly put her head down into Red's crotch. She started to give him a blowjob right there in the car. And Red started going much faster. I was saying like he's going 40 miles an hour. He got about 75 miles an hour. And the white lights of the beams are going off in the darkness. He finishes, obviously, because then he slows down. It's like a bad movie or a bad porno, bad song. But we come to some little corner store, and they say, "Well, we get some more beer." So they pull in and stop, leave the car running. Both of them go into the store, and then we hear this screeching. This truck comes in and slams directly into the utility pole right there. Bam! Huge sound, probably 20 feet away from us. And the guy just gets out and goes in the store. I never saw him come out because those people, our drivers, came back out and took us to the Devil's Back Acre and let us go. And then I'm assuming he got his car and she died in Amarillo. That was early on. So that was a really good precursor for what we, thought, oh man, this is fucking awesome. Because when you're 19 or whatever, you also don't think you're ever going to die or anything. And it was like, this is really fun. I remember we used to ride on the top of the car when people would drive. You're just an idiot when you're that age.
Hey, Josh here. I love making this podcast, and I'd love to make it my full-time gig. Besides telling the stories, I'm basically a one-man band, and that takes time. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You'll have access to loads of great bonus stories, and you'll have the satisfaction of knowing that you're supporting a truly independent podcast. Find the Patreon link in the show notes. And thanks. My next guest is Jeffrey Martin. He's a photographer, and his company builds cameras for mapping and 3D scanning. Think Google Street View. Jeffrey takes us on a strange trip with unique heights and a very strange and dark low. And a warning, this next story contains graphic descriptions that are not suitable for the squeamish.
Yeah, so I've traveled to a lot of places in order to take a massive, huge photograph, usually from the top of a tall building in some city. So I've been to, like, for this, I've been to, like, Japan, Rome, London, all kinds of, there was, like, major cities, Barcelona, and I was up on some kind of tall building at the top for maybe, like, all day or 2 or 3 full days, taking like thousands of photos of the cityscape and then putting them all together into a single huge photo. Spend a few weeks stitching it all together into a single huge photo. Of course, if you have like a long zoom lens and you're doing lots of shots in the city, you might get shots that are through windows and stuff, and you don't want to unduly embarrass somebody or something like that. So I try to check these photos before I publish them online for anything weird. And so I know someone else who made one of Paris, and they found a gun on a roof, and they told the police, and the police went and got the gun. And in my case, I was shooting one of these Gigapixel images in London, and I was like stitching it together and then checking it, and I'd been working on it for like a couple months, and then finally it was almost done, and I was, zoomed into 100% and checking the whole image, and I found a naked woman in a bathroom. It was on this like a roof apartment. It was like all glass, and the bathroom was all glass, and there were no curtains. And I think they figured they were on the top floor of the neighborhood, and they didn't, count on someone with a, like 200 millimeter lens from a quarter of a mile away. And so I blurred her out, but it was like a kind of like the back of her. So I was in Mexico in 2001, Guatemala and Mexico. My friend and I wanted to cover this kind of freaky Catholic Mexican faith healer event in near Monterrey, a village called Espinazo, which means the spine. So you call them Catholics, but like if you've been to Mexico, like they don't seem very Catholic compared to Catholics in the US or Europe. There's a lot of weird magic stuff and kind of witchy stuff. And so there was this like faith healer guy in the 1920s called Niño Fidencio, who I guess, like did some miracles and cured people. And now there's like this annual kind of pilgrimage where they like crawl down the street or like roll down the street or like go on their knees or, just something like to punish themselves because they're Catholic and they have to do that. So my friend wanted to write an article that he would sell it to the New Yorker, and I would take the photos. So that was like the big plan. And I met him in Guatemala, and we took buses from Guatemala through Chiapas and all the way through Mexico to the very north, and then back again. So we were in Oaxaca. We were looking for some weed, and so we found someone who said, like, meet us on the church steps at 8 o'clock. So we go to the church steps, and like there's some other guy there waiting on the church steps. We figure that like he's waiting for the same people. And so we start talking to him. His name was Ben, and he had this big scar on his forehead, like right in the middle of his forehead, like a serious like gouge kind of scar in the middle of his forehead. It was like really a bit weird. And my friend, who's a journalist, so he's pretty good at just kind of asking questions. And so finally we got to ask him like, okay, so what's this scar on your forehead? And then he told us this story. And then, so he was from Florida, and he was already in Oaxaca, and he had no passport, and he was on his way to Brazil, to the jungle, to eat ayahuasca, which he had been cultivating in Florida for quite a while. I've never done ayahuasca, but apparently there are like machine elves or some other, beings in a parallel world to ours. So he'd been in communication with them for quite a while. And they told him to drill a hole in his head, and it was something to do with infiltrating the political system in the U.S. So anyway, he took a hand drill, and like when you're drilling a hole like into a piece of wood, and then it like goes through, like it's like kind of it's resisting, and then it like goes through. So he did that, and like it went in like too deep into his brain, and then he like pulled it out, and there was like a chunk of brain there, and there was like quite a bit of blood, and he like, I don't know, put it down, and he said like his dog like ate the brain. But I've always wondered if he ever made it to Brazil, and what the vine told him to do next.
I want to thank Patrick and Jeffrey for sharing their experience. This podcast was created and produced by me, Josh Caldwell. Music by Visual Aid, my side music project. General support and copywriting by Miranda Caldwell. If you like the show, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to financially support the show, check out my Patreon page. You'll have access to loads of great bonus stories. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come back next week.